टीवी प्राइम टाइम समाचार में आपका स्वागत है।
About the meeting.
First of all, thank all of you all for waiting patiently till now for the media briefing. It was supposed to have been at 7 o'clock, but because the council went on, we couldn't finish and come early. It was a very useful meeting. It was only a continuation of the 42nd council meeting, so this is not the 43rd. 42nd meeting continued. Because on that one agenda, which was agenda number 9A, which had to be discussed, which was left inconclusive last time, so we took it up to further continue the discussion. All states spoke. I have heard Minister was with me, Anurag ji was with me, and the Revenue Secretary and his entire team was there. So discussions went on the issue of the borrowing, the extension of the cess, and so on. States had voiced their opinions and fairly today continue to voice. But even with that said, I would say some specific clarifications were asked and they were given also. Many of the clarifications which were asked were on the AG's opinion as regards the borrowing, as regards the council's authority to extend the collection of the cess beyond 5 years. All that was explained as it was discussed and questions were asked. In fact, I'm very grateful that the council started today with each of the ministers who spoke, recalling my morning's announcements and saying that it was nice of the center to have given a fifth free loans. All of them thanked us. Each one before starting their speech did say that. Also, they were happy about the additional fund allocation for capital expenditure. Many of them also appreciated the demand stimulus that we've given through the LTC and also the festival advance. I requested and appealed to the states to say if they ran a similar program of LTC, even they should extend that scheme and provide festival advance so that collectively India's revival post the pandemic would really be given a shot in the arm. So that was also part of the opening statement of many of the ministers. Specific clarifications, as I said, was about the extension of the cess beyond the 5 years. Compensation, how come it would be one amount and why can't it be the full amount? Even that was a bit of a discussion. The calculations varied. Where we had said very clearly it is about 235, there were some calculations given by one or two ministers which said it is only 1,85,000. So if you were anyway going to borrow 1,10,000, why can't you bring in the other 60, 70? Also thinking that the total deficit is only 185 and so on. Well, eventually it was a question of having heard everybody, not just in this meeting, but also in the last two meetings. After all the clarifications were given, I explained very clearly that this GST Council is a body which represents very high authority of the finance ministers of all the states. There has been very intense engagement, not just in this meeting, but also earlier. And as regards the shortfall in the compensation, After all, it is there for everyone to see that the collection of the cess is inadequate for paying the compensation. And that's absolutely apparent for everyone to see. And because it is something which was never envisaged, the shortfall is now going to have to be met by borrowing. Specific question of why the center can't be borrowing it and then giving it to the state was answered both by the finance secretary and by myself. Center has issued a borrowing calendar. If I go beyond that to borrow, it would immediately jack up the bond yields. The GSEC yields will go up. And if GSEC yields are the ones which are used as benchmark for every other borrowing in the country, the states going for borrowing on any other score, not just the compensation, would end up paying a very high price. The borrowing cost will go up. So will be the borrowing of even the private sector. If the GSEC rate is going to go up because I'm gone beyond my borrowing calendar, it's going to affect everybody's borrowing. And at a time when India is looking for more money to invest, more money to borrow and do business, can we afford that? But it's not going to be that much severe. The impact is not going to be all that much as it would be when the center borrows if the states were to borrow. And even from the first day's meeting, I've been very clearly saying that won't mean a chaotic, every state rushing to the market. We shall arrange, we shall facilitate, we shall work it out in such a way that Tarun Bajaj has joined me today exclusively for answering those questions. We shall facilitate in such a way that states are not going to be ending up one state paying very high interest for the borrowing, and the other probably being smart enough went to the market and quickly obtained something at a reasonable rate. We'll try to have something done in such a way that all states end up paying fairly equitable rate. That facilitation I have offered from the beginning. So clearly, that was explained, that as to why the center can't borrow, a lot of discussion happened on 292, 293, center borrowing under 292, states borrowing through the help of the center under 293. All this was in detail discussed. Majority of the states, as you know, had opted for option 1. On the one hand, they were repeatedly asking for speedily get us the money. We are fighting Corona on the one hand. We also want the revival to happen very quickly. Festivals are coming. We need action in the ground. So help us to borrow as soon as possible. On the other, you had states which kept saying, no, let us decide on the basis of consensus. Let's decide on the basis of consensus because we have not opted for one and we are substantial numbers, so you have to have a consensus, decide how we are going to borrow. And the discussion went on for some time between the states. I was obviously keenly hearing all the arguments. I could, end of the meeting, summarize that there was no consensus arrived on a matter on which differences exist. The GST Council can certainly take a call on cess, collection of cess, extending the period of collecting the cess, and so on. That was repeatedly reiterated. But among the members themselves, there was this question of, can the GST Council order that either the center borrow or the states do this or that state do it? Because every state under 293 has a business to do what it wants about its own borrowing. And the GST Council has been gracious enough in unanimously agreeing to extend the cess beyond 5 years. So if beyond 5 years the cess is being collected to repay the principal and the interest of the entire compensation, not just this compensation or that compensation, but the entire compensation, there is just no dispute. There are differences as to how it has to be borrowed, who's got to be borrowing, but there's no dispute. Every one of us agree that the entire compensation will have to be paid. It will be paid. Every one of us agree that this compensation cannot be paid out of state's other resources. Yes, agreed. Everyone has agreed on that. So there is no dispute. And therefore that was reiterated by us. At least I had to really appeal to all the members saying that there is no dispute, we may have differences. And if the numbers, say 21 who have written, are now saying, we've made a choice, allow us to do what we want with our money. We want to borrow, we'll borrow. So when I concluded, I did say, whilst I respect there's no unanimity, equally, can the council or members of the council stop another state from doing what it wants to do? I put this before the council. If states want to, on the back of having the confidence that the cess is going to pay the borrowing that they will have to undertake now for the shortfall in the compensation, can anyone or the council stop a member from doing that? Can the council stop a member from wanting to borrow and say the cess will go for repaying that borrowing? So on that point, and also very clearly saying, yes, unfortunately we were not able to arrive at a consensus, I appealed to every one of the members to say, quickly we have to give answers to those people who want money in their hands, because they are the ones, all of you all, each state are the ones who are fighting against COVID in the ground. So that was my winding up statement. So that's how this GST Council ended. That for my opening statement, and I'm sure if there's any question. Revenue Secretary is here. Secretary EA is here. We can answer your questions.
Thank you very much, ma'am. 22.
Ma'am, this is Krishnanand Tripathi from ETV Bharat. I just wanted to know, for first 4 months it was 1.51 lakh crore rupees. 2 more months compensation has become due. So what is the total amount that has become due? Second, can you also give us breakup for the 21 states, those who have opted for option 1, what will be the borrowing, and what will be the borrowing for the states, those who have not opted for any of the borrowing options?
See, the compensation has to be provided to the states as per the Compensation Cess Act. What the Act says, that whatever money gets collected in the compensation fund, that will have to be paid, right? So when you are asking about what is the amount due, the whole question is that how much amount has been collected into the compensation fund. And in fact, the compensation says whatever was collected till the month of August, and then also till the end of the September, just few days back it has been released. Now the question that perhaps you are asking is that what is the shortfall as compared to the protected 14% growth rate, and then what is the shortfall. For that, the council in this meeting itself, because this 42nd meeting was started on, this meeting was held on 5th of October, and today it has been continued. So on 5th of October, this council extended the levy of cess beyond 5 years because the collection is not enough during this period. So therefore, the whatever amounts that gets collected will get paid, and that becomes due to them, and whatever is the protected revenue and whatever is the shortfall, that will get paid because the levy of cess has been extended beyond 5 years, so it will get paid. Now, if the states want money, sooner, then the borrowing will have to be made, and that is why, precisely for that reason, the option one, the options were given, and then the states have given the option, and then based on that, the whichever states have given the option, accordingly, the government of India will work with the lending institutions and the states to facilitate the borrowing.
13.
I'm Meghna Mittal from Newsrise. Since there is stalemate in the GST Council regarding the issue, by when do you see the resolution? What are the options? Is there a GOM that could be formed, or how do you see the resolution of the entire issue?
Oh no, there is no unanimity. But the cess has been extended beyond 5 years. And equally, if there are states which want to go and borrow, we are willing to facilitate. I've also kept completely the option open for states to come and talk if they want to wanting to ask me any more questions. I'm willing to engage with every state.
6.
Good evening, ma'am. Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now. Ma'am, since you're saying that the states that so far have opted for option one, they will be allowed to go ahead and borrow funds. Just wanted to...
1 minute, Ruchi. Let's be clear on one thing. I don't think anyone can allow or disallow a state from what they want to do.
Right.
We have to be clear on that. It was more on the question of discussing with a sense of, being sure that the cess will get extended or not. There were also views about why the center can't borrow, for which I've given the answer. So I want that thought that somebody can stop. In fact, many of the states compared it with the UN Security Council. They said, is this a Security Council where somebody will veto and the rest of them will have to obey? Some states did ask that also. So the GST Council, and I made it a point to say this, I don't think the Council's intent is to stop anybody. So let's understand that.
Ma'am, just a clarification on that. How soon will we proceed with the borrowing for states that have already agreed for option one? And secondly, in case the other dissenting states knock the doors of the apex court, what is going to be our next step of action to ensure that either their concerns are dealt with, or will we see this battle now going to the courts?
I want you all to not use words like battle. There wasn't any battle there. There wasn't any battle there, and GST Council is, I think, one of those very respected federal institutions. A lot of discussion happens. Definitely there can be differences. But where a unanimity is not there, that doesn't mean there's going to be a dispute. Let's be clear on that. And as regards what is going to happen about borrowing, which are the states which want to come and access, Tarun will explain it to you, how soon he can provide. And I'm not answering any questions. So what happens if they go to court? I'm sorry, no, yeah. I don't expect a dispute. I've explained as to why there is no dispute. And therefore, I've also said, whoever wants to talk, please talk. But as many states said in the council, further talking, holding other states will only make them appear very poorly in their own back home states. Because they come to the GST Council thinking that there will be some answers given to them. They can't go back now to repeatedly say, sorry, the council couldn't arrive at a consensus, so till then I'm not doing any expenditure, whether it is pandemic, whether it is development, or whether anything else. We are answerable even to them. does our conscience allow us to hold back states which have opted for something, saying we'll have to hold you back till such a time a consensus is arrived at? I did ask this also as a question. Does the collective conscience of the council, in its quest for unanimity, which I also strive for, which I also strive to arrive at, and that is why 42nd meeting has had an extended meeting today. All of us try to keep with that spirit of consensus in decision making. But is it going to be till such a time that the consensus is arrived at, states are going to be held back from, if they want to go ahead, borrowing? And especially when the borrowing comes under Article 293, it is the state's right to decide what it wants to do. Even this was raised. So, battle, dispute.
20.
But Tarun, can you please explain?
I'll talk to you about the borrowing part only. The Honorable FM had explained to you in great detail as to why the center should not borrow and the state should borrow. I may also add here that the 15th Finance Commission had given an interim award last year, and when the award was given, the COVID was nowhere near that. So there were certain amounts to be given to the states based on a percentage basis, and there are certain amounts which are to be given to the states on the basis of the actual quantum. For example, the revenue deficit grants are mentioned as the amount. The SGRF grants are mentioned as an amount. The local body grants come as an amount. The center has actually carried out those responsibilities in spite of the fact that COVID has also affected the center's revenues. And though our revenues went down and the center does not even have the option of a compensation on account of lowering of GST, but on the understanding or on the basis that the states are at the forefront of fighting COVID, that assistance was given and should have been given. We have already increased our borrowing borrowing amount from 7.8 to 12 lakh crores, and in the first half of this year, we have borrowed more than what we had borrowed in the whole of the last year. So, as she had explained to you, I will only emphasize again that the extra borrowing or the strain on the central government fiscal will have a greater bearing on the macros, and for the interest of all the players in the system, it is better that we try not to expand the central fiscal deficit beyond a point. Having said that, let me also belabor with you to explain what is this whole issue about. The amount has to be paid, the GST compensation has to be paid from this compensation cess amount. The compensation cess is levied on certain products which have a higher GST rate. That amount comes into the consolidated fund, goes to the public account, and from there it is distributed to these various states depending on how much is the need of each state or what is the deficit of each state. Now, when there is a shortage in the compensation cess, and the compensation cess has been decided to be taken ahead from July 2022 onwards, therefore, it has been mentioned that amount should be borrowed and given to the states to fight COVID at this very difficult time. But the point that I want to belabor with you, emphasize to you, is that both the interest and the principal will be prepaid from the cess amount, compensation cess amount. That money will not be paid either by the central resources or by the state resources. So the money will come from the compensation cess, and this compensation cess will be collected from July 2022 onwards till all the compensation cess principal which has been borrowed has been repaid, all the interest on that amount has been paid, and also the less compensation which is paid for the current year and maybe for the next year has also been paid. So it is, I would say, a third party or a third person who's actually taking the burden of both the payment of the principal and the interest. So this issue needs to be looked at from that point of view. Again, having said that, I would say we have not done detailed calculations, but I can say that from July 22, we'll start having money because there'll be no compensation which would become payable to the states on account of the shortfall in July onwards. Only the previous backlog would have to be paid. So that money would become available for payment of interest, for payment of principal, for payment of the less compensation cess that has been paid to the states. So in our view, the repayment of the loan that we take in this year and the next year would happen from the third year onwards, the third year, fourth year, fifth year. So there is no need to compare the rates at which we will borrow with the 10-year GSEC. For example, the 2-year borrowing rate for the center is sub 5%, and for the borrowing rate for the center for 5 years is sub 6%. So based on these indicative figures, the actual figures will be known only once those bonds are floated and they are picked up by the market. So it will be much lower than what may be the expectation of some people, because the tenor of the loan would be much lesser. So when the states come to us, we will actually work with them, try and calculate or estimate as to the shortfall that each state would face and what is the compensation that would become available to that state, and work out based on these timings. And as the FM has mentioned, it will be our effort to ensure that the states get a good rate, though the amount is again to be paid back from the compensation cess. I'm actually repeating this point again and again because whatever is coming in the media, this understanding needs to go that the resources of the states are intact. The resources of the center would be intact. Of whatever is collected, this amount will be paid back from the cess, compensation cess that we'll collect, and the center is committed to help the states to borrow at the minimum price working along with RBI. So I think a large number of states are now ready for this kind of a system to be operated, and once they actually come with the exact figures, so that would be worked out for each of the states. So I think this is what needs to be understood and emphasized in this whole scheme of things, that the issue which is being raised is not something that I'm paying from my pocket, but it is a separate pocket that is there that will be used to pay for all these amounts.
Last question, 21.
Ma'am Shishir, just wanted to clarify one thing. As Mr. Bajaj was saying, that entire interest will be paid out from the compensation cess beyond June 2022. Does this mean that under the option 2, when it was said that out of 2,35,000 crore, interest has to be borne by state and the principal amount to be paid out of the compensation cess?
I don't think at this stage we need to talk about other options. They're all out now. Nobody's opted for 2, so there's no point in talking about it.
Okay. And the other thing is that does this mean that now all those states, the 21 states who are ready to go for option 1, they will be permitted to go for that? And those who are not, they will be given time to come back, and if they want to avail the scheme, they can do that, ma'am. Am I correct, ma'am?
We are open to anyone who wants us to facilitate any loan. Option 1, already a lot of people have said it, and they even today said, please, tomorrow morning we are approaching. So we are ready to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, friends.